All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Imagine waking up. Your throat is absolutely on fire, and your nose is running like a broken faucet. Today, you'd probably just drag yourself to the medicine cabinet, grab some ibuprofen, maybe a decongestant, and you're mostly functional by noon. But imagine a world where none of that exists. No pharmacy, no doctor 3 miles down the road, and absolutely no Google to tell you whether your headache is just tension or some incredibly rare brain parasite.
It's literally just you, a forest, and, well, whatever creative ideas your ancestors came up with to keep themselves alive. And the crazy thing? They actually pulled it off. For hundreds of thousands of years before antibiotics or germ theory or modern surgery even existed, humans thrived, reproduced, and built entire civilizations. So how exactly did they manage that without collectively dropping dead the second someone caught a cold? Well, that is exactly the mystery we're going to unpack today.
Here is our roadmap for the explainer. We're going to cover the caveman medicine myth, Earth's first pharmacy, extreme ancient first aid, the ancient immune system, the brutal reality, and finally, the ultimate survival tool. Let's get going.
Part 1. The Caveman Medicine Myth.
We really need to immediately reframe how we think about this. We've got to stop imagining our ancestors as these helpless cavemen just sitting around waiting for penicillin to drop from the sky. Ancient people were incredibly practical. I mean, they were running a chaotic global clinical trial for over 60,000 years. When dying is a daily possibility, you pay close attention. And the archaeology completely backs this up. Over in Iraq's Shanidar Cave, researchers found Neanderthal burials packed with medicinal plants like yarrow and ephedra. Actually, let that sink in. Even Neanderthals were deliberately placing medicinal plants in graves before modern humans even arrived in the area. And all of this, absolutely vital knowledge, was painstakingly passed down through human memory and community tradition.
Moving right along to Part 2, Earth's first pharmacy.
Let's talk about the most widespread tool they had: legitimate, empirical plant pharmacology. These ancient remedies weren't just woo-woo magic. Take willow bark, which was used across ancient Egypt, Greece, China, and North America for pain relief. It worked because it contains salicin, which is literally the exact active compound that modern aspirin is based on. Ancient Egyptians relied heavily on garlic, and modern studies confirm it has genuine antimicrobial properties. And turmeric? Used for millennia in Ayurvedic medicine, it contains curcumin, a seriously powerful anti-inflammatory. They observed cause and effect, and they successfully discovered the exact compounds that are sitting on our pharmacy shelves right now.
And they weren't just randomly chewing on leaves either. They had a remarkably sophisticated system: identify the symptom, pick the proper plant, prep it, maybe by boiling certain roots or mixing ingredients to mask the bitterness, and then administer it. We know this for a fact because they documented it on 4,000-year-old clay tablets from ancient Sumer. It established a clinical structure that perfectly mirrors exactly how a modern doctor writes your prescription today.
Which brings us to Part 3, Extreme Ancient First Aid.
Okay, herbs are great for a fever, but how did they handle severe physical trauma without modern antiseptics? Instead of panicking, they utilized some incredibly observant biological hacks to close wounds and fight off infections. The ancient Egyptians used honey. It has a super low pH and naturally releases hydrogen peroxide, creating a totally hostile environment for bacteria. It's actually a lot like the clinical Manuka honey used in hospitals today. They also used mineral-rich clay as antimicrobial poultices. And yes, maggots. Indigenous populations globally figured out that maggots only eat dead, infected tissue while completely ignoring the healthy stuff, a wound-cleaning trick that, believe it or not, is still used in modern medicine. Oh, and they even applied spider webs to wounds because spider silk contains vitamin K, which helps blood clot. It sounds completely wild, but it is 100% grounded in real biology.
The crucial takeaway here is that they didn't shy away from major trauma. What is genuinely jaw-dropping is the archaeological evidence we have of extreme ancient surgeries. We're talking skulls showing 9,000-year-old brain surgery, a process called trepanation, with clear signs of bone healing. That means the patients actually survived the procedure. We also found a 7,000-year-old skeleton in France with a flawlessly healed forearm amputation. And surviving an amputation back then required more than just the surgery. It meant intense, dedicated post-operative community care to keep the infection out.
To really put that into perspective, let's compare it to something a bit closer to our time. Think about 19th century European hospitals before the 1860s. Doctors literally weren't washing their hands before operating. The mortality and infection rates in those 1840s hospitals were so incredibly devastating that sometimes you were honestly better off just staying home. The universe has an incredibly dark sense of humor here, because an ancient surgeon working outdoors in fresh air with clean stone tools probably had better sterility conditions than a Victorian-era doctor.
Let's pivot to part 4, the ancient immune system.
Survival wasn't just about what they put on the outside of their bodies. It was about the incredible defense mechanisms happening inside them. They possessed an extraordinarily capable immune system shaped by millions of years of evolutionary pressure. The immune system learns and adapts, building herd immunity over generations as populations get exposed to different pathogens. But there's a tragic consequence to this system. Your immune system is basically a biological record of what your ancestors survived. So when Europeans arrived in the Americas carrying novel diseases like smallpox and measles, indigenous Americans completely lacked that inherited resistance. That lack of prior exposure is exactly why those diseases catastrophically killed up to 90% of indigenous populations in some regions.
But for those who are adapted to their local environments, they were immunologically robust. And a massive driver of that was their spectacular gut microbiome. Ancient humans ate a super diverse diet and had daily exposure to soil and bacteria. More importantly, they ate traditional fermented foods. Before refrigeration, fermentation was just a way to preserve food, but it also loaded it with beneficial bacteria, creating these incredibly powerful probiotic supplements like kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir, kvass, and injera. Modern research is showing us right now that this high microbial diversity is central to immune function, and it's why they had significantly lower rates of autoimmune diseases compared to our highly sterilized modern lives.
Now for part 5, the brutal reality.
All right, let's be totally fair for a second. This wasn't some magical, disease-free utopia, and ancient medicine definitely couldn't fix everything. You often hear that average life expectancy in the ancient world was terrible, sitting at about 30 to 35 years. But the reality is that massive childhood mortality completely skewed those numbers. Somewhere between 25 and 50% of kids simply died before adulthood. However, and this is key, if you survived the incredibly dangerous gauntlet of childhood, you could easily live into your 50s, 60s, or even 70s. Old age definitely existed, it just wasn't guaranteed for everyone.
And look, if you did get seriously sick, things could go terribly wrong. Bacterial infections that crossed a certain threshold were absolute death sentences. A blocked appendix, complications during childbirth, or even a dental infection that spread to the jaw were often fatal. Badly healed broken bones caused permanent disability, and diseases like malaria, tuberculosis, and cholera were constant, lingering threats. It's a very humbling reminder that modern medicine, where a standard 5-day course of pills cures what used to be a guaranteed death sentence, is an absolute miracle, not a luxury.
Which brings us to our final section, part 6, the ultimate survival tool.
So what happened for the things they couldn't physically cure with plants or surgery? Well, ancient healers tapped into something profound that modern science is honestly just beginning to fully grasp. I'm talking about the placebo effect. And this isn't mysticism. This is a highly documented neuroscience phenomenon. When shamans and healers performed these elaborate ritualistic ceremonies with the whole community present, it provided a massive psychological signal to the patient's brain. You are being cared for, and we are fighting for you. That deep belief genuinely improves physical recovery, measurably dropping cortisol levels and actually shifting pain perception. And these healers weren't just taking wild guesses. They built brilliant, highly structured medical traditions all around the world. The Egyptian Ebers Papyrus from 1550 BCE documented over 700 remedies that blended early science with magic. Traditional Chinese medicine spent thousands of years systematically mapping the body. Ayurvedic medicine in India featured advanced surgical techniques by 600 BCE, techniques that were so good, 18th century British surgeons actually traveled there just to learn them. And of course, ancient Greece gave us Hippocrates, who proved that disease had natural, not supernatural causes, laying the literal foundation for modern medical science.
But underneath all the pharmacology, the surgeries, and the elaborate rituals lies one completely undeniable truth. Social isolation kills, and social connection heals. Ultimately, we humans are deeply biological, deeply social creatures. Ancient humans lived in tight-knit groups where the sick were fiercely cared for and the weak were protected. The community itself was literally the most powerful medical institution they had. And modern research consistently backs this up today, finding loneliness to be a massive risk factor for early death.
So when you strip away the MRI machines and the robotic surgeries of the last 150 years, it's absolutely amazing to see how the fundamentals really haven't changed at all. Eat a diverse diet of real food, stay connected to your people, move your body, manage your stress, get enough sleep. It's kind of funny, actually. The core advice your doctor gives you today in a bright, sterile clinic is basically the exact same prescription a healer would have given you 10,000 years ago sitting around a campfire.
Despite living in a world full of things trying to kill them, they made it. through an unbelievable willingness to try absolutely anything, including, let's not forget, deliberately packing maggots into open wounds. They survived long enough to eventually produce you. You are the living, breathing proof that their observation, their creativity, and their unbroken chain of community care actually worked.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to reflect on regarding your own biological legacy. Which of these ancient survival mechanisms are you still relying on today, right now, without even realizing it? Think about that the next time you drink hot tea for a sore throat, or suddenly feel a whole lot better just because a friend checked in on you when you were sick. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.